If you're a parent, you need to know that emotional abuse is just as damaging to your child as physical abuse. And if it's repeated, it can be even worse. And so I read an article recently that said since the start of the COVID pandemic, apparently 50% of high school age teenagers have experienced some kind of emotional abuse in their home from a parent or a parent figure. And, reading this was really distressing to me because even if the stats are wrong, if it's anything close to half of teenagers being emotionally abused, what that's doing is perpetuating cycles of intergenerational abuse and trauma. And I would urge you, if you're a parent and you've suffered from any kind of past abuse, be it physical or emotional, you need to take that seriously. You need to do whatever you can to overcome that trauma, to heal, process, and release that trauma. So let me tell you a little bit, little story that is about my situation. I have currently an 11-year-old daughter. She's almost 12. And when she was born, I had not yet started my healing journey. And, I wasn't ready to be a parent, but the universe doesn't really give a shit whether you're ready or not. She was an oops, but a wonderful oops. And be that as it may, when she was born, it just brought up all kinds of memories from my early childhood. And in a weird way, I thought that even though I had issues, I thought that I had overcome some of them. But when she was born, like all these emotions just came rushing back. And not just that, I started to think about things that happened in my early childhood. And I could see her, she'd be crying a lot and breaking things and doing what babies and then toddlers do. But she was also so sweet and so innocent. And it reminded me of my early childhood and the things that happened to me, and it made me really, really angry. And look, this is not a video to bash parents. As a parent, I know that you do the best that you can for your child with the level of consciousness and healing that you're at. I don't think any parent wants to intentionally traumatize their child. In fact, I know they don't. The problem is when you have unresolved trauma, the misbehavior of children can really trigger you badly, and you can have a fight, flight, or freeze type emotional reaction, and it can be very difficult to control the way you speak to your child, or your reactions to misbehavior can lead to screaming, saying things that you regret saying things that you don't mean. And so look, this is not a video to bash my parents or bash your parents or bash you or anybody else. I know life can be hard, and the trauma that you've experienced in your life, you didn't ask for that. And oftentimes these things do happen in our early childhood, and then we spend the rest of our life trying to deal with it and overcome it. But the issue is once you're an adult, if you still have lingering trauma issues, it's your responsibility to work on that. You can't just ignore it and think that okay, that was in the past. I'm just, I let it go. It's not an issue anymore. It's not happening now. Because that's not the way the emotional part of our brain works. The emotional part of our brain has no concept of time. So even if it happened 30, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, however long ago it was, if something triggers an emotion in you, it's like it's happening right now. Can you relate? Has your child done something that just drives you absolutely crazy and makes your head almost explode? And look, even if you have no trauma whatsoever, you know, kids can be challenging. They can piss you off or upset you. But what I'm talking about is almost an uncontrollable emotional reaction, an emotional overreaction that your kids can easily trigger with misbehavior. So what should you do? The first step is just awareness. Look at your life, look at your past, look at your reactions to life situations, people, places, and things, and be honest with yourself. Do you overreact? Do you get emotionally triggered? Do you sometimes lose emotional control? And if you do, there's no reason to beat yourself up about it. Again, it's not your fault what happened to you when you were younger, but just be aware of it and understand, okay, this could be a potential problem. And not just that, I don't want to pass this on to my child or to my children, because that was a huge motivation for me. I've suffered with generalized anxiety, mixed in with depression and other complex PTSD symptoms. And frankly, it sucked. There were days where it was like a living hell, and I didn't want to pass that on to my daughter. And so that, combined with a painful breakup, just made me realize that, you know what? I have this major issue to deal with, and I can't avoid it anymore. And I need to do whatever it takes to heal myself. And that's the attitude that I urge you to have. Have a whatever it takes attitude and an open mind to just try things and see what works for you. And so therapy can be helpful. I would just say that therapy alone, especially if you've had to deal with major trauma and abuse issues in your past, I think that therapy is valuable, but alone it's not enough. So this is what else I would urge you to do. Combine therapy with self-development and with trauma release methods. It's kind of like a tripod. And if you have all three legs of the tripod, again, therapy, self-development, trauma release, then you can overcome this. And not just that, it's when you combine these methods, you will heal faster, you will have progress faster. So as far as therapy, look, there's all kinds of therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's kind of the traditional Jungian psychoanalysis type therapy. There's more and more trauma-informed type therapies available these days. So I recommend looking into that and see what works best for you. As far as self-development, that's a very broad field. But there's some amazing books out there. I'll give you a couple of recommendations to start. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is an amazing book. What's another one? The Body Keeps the Score. That's an amazing book about how trauma is not just stored in your mind, it's also stored in your body, and techniques to deal with that. There's all kinds of amazing self-development books out there. And me personally, I'm a self-development junkie. Like, once I found out that, hey, there's ways to think differently, there's ways to heal, and there's ways to improve my life, I became addicted. And look, you don't have to become addicted. You just need to do the work, though. And for me, I have to read a lot for my profession. I'm currently an attorney, and so just for my eyesight, it's hard for me to read regular books all the time. So what I got is audiobooks. Audiobooks are amazing because you could just listen to them when you're doing stuff around the house or just driving, and you can get this amazing information. The other piece of advice I would give you about self-development books is if you find a book that really speaks to you and really helps you a lot, don't just read it or listen to the audio version one time. I recommend do it multiple times. The books that have been the most impactful in my life, I've read or listened to 5, 10, even 15 or more times. And what repetition does is it takes those concepts and it basically imprints them deep into your subconscious. So what happens is when you have a reaction to something, instead of just having that emotional triggering reaction, what will also be triggered is a certain concept from a book to help you deal with that situation. So even if your emotions are all riled up, you also at the same time have those methods and coping mechanisms come up as well, so you can deal with those emotions constructively instead of lashing out. And again, one of the worst things you can do is lash out emotionally at your child. It's very damaging to children. Think back to your childhood. When your parents lashed out on you, how did it feel to you? I can promise you that some of the biggest impacts in your life, if your parents were ever emotionally abusive to you, are those times where they really lashed out at you and said something really hurtful. Those wounds stay with you, and they can stay with you for a lifetime until you process, release, and heal them. So let's get to the third main method, and that is trauma release. That's what my channel is about, because I feel that, unfortunately, this is the element of trauma healing that is the least widely known. And so my purpose and my mission is to get the word out there to teach people about these trauma processing, healing, and release methods, because even if you have the best mindset in the world from self-development, even if you have amazing awareness and techniques from therapy, if you're constantly tied up in knots inside, if your emotions out of a scale of 1 to 10 are constantly vacillating between 7, 8, 9, or even 10 when you're triggered emotionally, then even the best concepts in the world are difficult to apply if you're too triggered, if your emotions are just frankly too loud in the background. So that's what trauma release is about. It's about processing, healing, and releasing that trauma, getting it out of you. So then when something does trigger you emotionally, the volume level is much lower. So instead of being at an 8 or a 9, the reaction is a 3 or a 4, and it's much more manageable. So what are some trauma release methods? Please check out my videos about network chiropractic, about getting satisfaction letters, Wim Hof breathing method with cold exposure, combo, psychedelics, neurofeedback. There's lots of methods now that can help you process, heal, and release that trauma. And look, doing some of these methods can be really unpleasant and hard, but it's kind of like pulling the thorn out. If you have a deep emotional wound, it hurts to pull it out, but once you pull the thorn all the way out, you start to heal and the pain will dissipate. So I urge you, please do all three: therapy, self-development, and trauma processing, healing, and release methods. Until next time, I love you.